We begin with the ongoing search for the Titan, the missing submersible lost in the North Atlantic. Now, just over an hour ago, an American military plane touched down at St. John's International Airport. It's carrying another submersible, which will be used in the search efforts. Flatbed trucks are standing by for transport. Now, this is one of 3 planes on the way. The other 2 are expected to arrive tomorrow. So let's go now to Heather Gillis, who has been following this story from the start. So Heather, what's the latest?
Carolyn, there is still no sign of Titan. That's the sub that went missing en route to the Titanic. It's now a race against time. Experts estimate the crew has less than 40 hours of oxygen left. Now, the search continued today, and it's going to go on into tonight, with St. John's being used as a base to deploy equipment as needed should the Titan, the submersible, be found along with its crew. Now, this is an international search effort. We're going to have all of the details on this just a little later in the show. En route to the famous shipwreck, the Titan submersible is still missing somewhere in the vast North Atlantic Ocean. It and 5 people inside haven't been heard from since Sunday, about 380 nautical miles off St. John's. Rescue Coordinator Captain Jamie Frederick with the U.S. Coast Guard in Boston says U.S. and Canadian Coast Guards and Navies have searched 7,600 square miles by air and by sea.
These search efforts have focused on both surface, with C-130 aircraft searching by sight and with radar, and subsurface with P-3 aircraft were able to drop and monitor sonar buoys. To date, those search efforts have not yielded any results.
Frederick calls the operation complex, one the U.S. Coast Guard doesn't have the expertise or equipment to carry out on its own. The Royal Canadian Navy ship Glace Bay has a specialized medical team and a hyperbaric chamber. It will reach the area Thursday, while private ships like Technip's Deep Energy are searching Titan's last known location near the Titanic wreck. That ship is a familiar sight in St. John's Harbor and the offshore oil industry. It's using an ROV to search the sea. St. John's will be a staging area used to deploy ships and equipment like the submarine inside this U.S. Air Force plane. The Coast Guard's federal minister in this country says they're doing everything they can to help.
The CCGS John Cabot has sonar, and it is headed to the site. There's 2 other Canadian Coast Guard ships that were there but are now in St. John's, ready to port equipment as necessary.
But with less than 40 hours of oxygen on board, time is running out for the 5 confirmed on board, including OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush. CBS News correspondent David Pogue knows what it's like to be inside Titan. He says there's 7 ways it can return to the surface.
Sandbags that drop off, lead pipes that drop off, the legs can drop off, there's an air balloon, there's thrusters, and one of them works even if everybody on board is unconscious. So one of them is a timed release thing that sends the sub to the surface after X amount of hours. So maybe they're out there bobbing away, but remember, they're bolted in from the outside.
The sub lost communication within 2 hours of its journey. He worries it could be near the ocean floor. And with no sign of Titan, experts like this retired U.S. Navy submarine commander are left to speculate.
So I fear they're down on the bottom. Again, something could have happened. There could have been a leak which let water into the submarine. They could have got, maybe they were very close to that Titanic and then the current pushed them and they somehow got snagged or caught.
And while there is still no word on what happened to the Titan, the U.S. Coast Guard says it is going to keep searching tonight, and all of their efforts are focused on finding it. And if they do find Titan, well, then the U.S. Coast Guard, which is leading this mission, says then they will focus on how to rescue the people who are inside.
Thank you so much, Heather. That's Heather Gillis reporting live. Well, crews are racing against the clock to find Titan, as we said. So what do we know about the people on board? Well, all 5 people have been identified, and here's what we can tell you about them. Shahzada Dawood is said to be on board along with his son. The pair is originally from Pakistan but now live in the UK. Dawood holds a top job with a Pakistani chemical company and, according to the New York Times, comes from one of the wealthiest families in the country. Now, Hamish Harding is a British pilot, businessman, and explorer. He's already been to the deepest part of the ocean. He also flew to space in 2022 as part of the Jeff Bezos space flight. Harding is married with 2 children. And according to French media, Paul-Henri Nargeolet is also on board. The 77-year-old is one of the foremost experts on the Titanic wreck. He's traveled down multiple times and has overseen the recovery of more than 5,000 objects from the ship.
Hi, my name is Stockton Rush. I'm the CEO and founder of OceanGate. Let's take a look at Titan.
And we can confirm that Stockton Rush, the head of OceanGate Expeditions, is the sole employee on board. We've spoken with Rush on several occasions over the years, including getting this tour of the missing submersible. He previously told CBC News that the goal of these expeditions is to learn more about the wreckage, the ecology of the environment, and the condition of the Titanic. And as we mentioned, the U.S. Coast Guard believes the 5 people on board have less than 40 hours of oxygen left, but there are more concerns than having enough air. Dr. Ken Leday is a hyperbaric medicine specialist at MUN. He says there are other dangers like carbon monoxide poisoning and hypothermia.
All 3 of them could lead to a loss of consciousness. As you get more and more hypothermic, you will lose consciousness and lose the ability to even use your muscles or manipulate any controls. Hypoxia, the low oxygen, that kind of sneaks up on you, and you get very little warning about loss of consciousness. The carbon dioxide on its own won't cause a loss of consciousness until the levels get very high. But above levels of 60, 70, 80 millimeters of mercury of carbon dioxide, you'll start to get sedation. It acts like an anesthetic gas, in fact, and you'll get more and more sedated. By the time they get to that, and you'll get distressed too, because it'll force you into breathing faster, your heart rate will go up. But in combination, these 3 things, low temperature, low oxygen, and low and high carbon dioxide, all those things will act, together, what we call synergistically, to have a really treacherous conditions.